Hey, Eric here from Wonder with Eric. Today I want to tell you about a project that I've done in the past called the Big History Project. What is Big History? Well, a traditional history explores the written records of the human race. So, all the way back to the earliest civilizations, all the way up through the modern day, we look at the written record and we explore the things that happen based on that. Where big history differs is that it explores a much broader expanse of topics, all the way back to the Big Bang and the early universe and the earliest things that scientists can detect, all the way up through the modern day and even into the future to things that are likely and probable to happen in the future. For my personal big history project, I divided time up into 10 periods or eras. The very first one was the prehistoric era. So this is everything from the Big Bang, the early universe, all the way up to the dawn of civilization, right before the very first civilizations. So this encompasses the early universe, our early solar system, our planet and how it was formed, the dawn of life on our planet, the early life forms, dinosaurs and all that, the earliest hominids and human-like creatures, up to the earliest anatomically modern human beings, and then everything that anatomically modern humans did until the first civilizations. My second period is the early civilizations, which I also call the ancient period. So this is Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, the Indus Valley civilization, all that kind of stuff. The earliest civilizations that we have records for and that we have good archaeological evidence to support. Also early China as well. The third period is the classical period. So this is ancient Greece, ancient Rome during the height of their civilizations, all the other civilizations around the world that they came into contact with and the things that they did. The classical period runs from the end of the Bronze Age, which was about 800 BCE, and until the fall of Rome, which was about 500 CE. The fourth period is the medieval period, which runs from the fall of Rome about 500 CE until about 1500 CE, when our next period begins. The fifth period is the Renaissance and early modern era. This begins about 1500 and goes until about 1800. Which leads us to our sixth category, which is the 19th century, also known as the 1800s. So this is the time of cowboys in the Old West and the Industrial Revolution really heating up and all that kind of stuff. The following period, the seventh period, is the early 20th century. Also, I call this the World Wars era. So this happens from about 1900 until the end of World War II in 1945. This period was characterized by the World Wars, which were major life-altering events for people all around the world. The eighth period is the Cold War period. This begins just after World War II in about 1946 and carries on until 1991, which was the fall of the Soviet Union. This period, just like the World Wars period, was colored by this Cold War that happened all around the world, mainly between the United States on one side and the Soviet Union on the other. The ninth category is the post-Cold War world. So this is from 1991 until modern times, until the modern day today. This post-Cold War period was characterized by the War on Terror and the power vacuum left by the Soviet Union when it fell, and all the breakaway republics and the interplay between them and the rest of the world, and the War on Terror, as I said, and all these things that have happened right up until our present day. The 10th and final period is possible and likely future scenarios. So these are things that, based on the best modern science and the projections that we can look out into the future, these are the things that are most likely to happen. We're talking near future here, within the next century. Don't want to get too far out into the weeds in like really weird, hundreds or thousands of years into the future, stuff like that. That's a little beyond our scope here. We're looking at the fairly near future and things that are fairly likely to happen. Now, you may have already noticed, and I have to admit, that this is kind of a Western biased structure. And the reason for that is because I'm an English speaker primarily, and the English source material is inherently biased towards England, which is placed in Western Europe, and America, which is the other largest English speaking country in the world. And it's just hard to find good information in English about other parts of the world. I like to find it whenever I can. I'm just as curious about other parts of the world as I am about the Western parts, but sometimes it's not as easy to find that information. So I try to put it in there whenever I can find it. So for each of those periods, each of those eras, what I would do is a multimedia, multidisciplinary approach to try and learn as much as I could about that period in a short period of time. So I would obviously read books. You can see I have a lot of books behind me. I like to read. Reading is a great way to learn, and by reading a couple of books about the period in question and some of the major events that happened there, it's a great way to get a general idea of what that period was all about. There's an endless supply of great books out there about all the historical periods and all the historical topics. So I definitely encourage people to read. In this day and age, there are fewer and fewer people actually opening up a paper book for leisure, and I think that's a shame. I think it's good for the brain to read a good old-fashioned paper book once in a while. In addition to books, I would watch movies and documentaries about the period in question. I'm a big movie fan as well, so I love historical movies, epic movies, things like that. I'm also very fascinated by documentaries. I like to learn, so why not watch and be entertained and learn something at the same time? You got to watch it with historical movies because some of them are more historical than others, and many times they take a lot of liberties with the real history just to make a more entertaining movie. So you can still watch it and enjoy it and get the gist of the historical situation based on a historical movie like that, but just know that not every fine detail in those movies is going to be accurate, and some are better than others. I also like to listen to music that was written or composed in the period in question or that has been inspired by that period. It's a great way to get in the mood. And if you pick some quiet, calm music while you're reading a book, even better. You're doubling up on it. I'm also a video game fan. I've grown up playing video games. I still love a good video game once in a while, although I don't play as much as I used to. But there's a lot of good historical video games that are inspired by real history and have some historical value to them. If you can find a good historical video game and use it to accompany your studies of a historical period, so much the better. Now, for each of these time periods, obviously there's 10 of these periods. So as I'm marching forward through time, literally, I'm also figuratively marching through time, or I'm figuratively marching through time while I'm literally marching through time. You know what I mean. At some point, you have to just call it done with one historical period and move forward to the next. And I wrestled with this in the early parts of when I was doing this project at the beginning, and it was kind of hard to decide when to just stop and when to move on. Eventually, I settled into a routine of going 1 month per period, because then it would force me to move forward even if I didn't feel like I was quite ready yet, and I would just have to keep on marching on. In the end, I ended up going through this big history project like 3 or 4 times, all the way from start to finish, over the course of about a decade. And so when I got up to the future, I would just turn around and go all the way back to prehistory again and just keep rolling like that. And I did it 3, 4, maybe even 5 times before I was all said and done. This has been an extremely good learning experience for me. There are periods of history that I'm more interested in than others. And had I not forced myself to go into some of these areas that I wasn't quite as interested in, there would have been glaring holes in my overall knowledge of history. But because I forced myself to go and look at every period of history all across this span of time, I have a pretty well-rounded knowledge of history. Now, I'm not going to say that I know everything there is to know about any given subject. This is the realm of specialists who spend their entire career focusing on one narrow field of study. And there's something to be said for that. I'm thankful that there are scholars like that in the world that really devote themselves to one subject, because they're the ones who offer us new developments in history and interpretation of history and archaeological finds and the deep stuff about one little subject area. But there's also something to be said for this broad sweep of history and having a good general knowledge of all history. If you're a person that's interested in history, this might be a great project for you to try because it will give you a good all-around knowledge of the entire span of human history, and even before humans, and even after humans possibly. About a year ago, I stopped doing the Big History Project. I'd been through it, like I said, 3, 4, maybe even 5 times all the way through, and I just felt like I was ready for a change. I needed to loosen the reins a little bit. I was tired of having all of my time regimented into a project like that, and I just felt like I was kind of pushing myself a little too hard in it. So I took a step back and I stopped doing that for a while. For probably the last 6 or 8 months, I've stopped doing that, maybe even a year. And now, like in recent months, I've kind of found myself kind of a little bit listless and directionless in life, and I kind of want another project to dedicate my mind to. So, not long ago, I had a revelation about a new project that I'm going to be beginning. In fact, I've already begun it, but I'm not going to tell you about that today. You'll have to tune in next time to hear about that one. Anyhow, if you enjoyed today's video, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell to get notified when I post something new, leave a comment, share it with your friends. All that kind of stuff helps the channel keep growing. Thank you for taking the time to wonder with Eric today. I hope you'll join me again next time for another intellectual journey. Until then, keep exploring.